So much. It's going to be legendary panel. So let me just one more time introduce our fantastic panelist, Keisha Robinson. Keisha is and, so, so sorry. It feels like I know you for a while already. Keisha is the founder of Email Artisan. It's a very cool solution that helps actually based on subscription model and helps marketers to create cool email templates. The next speaker is Naj Salam, digital marketing trainer at We Are Digital. And beside this, Naj also a huge fan of gaming, right? And she has cool stickers. I'm not sure if any left. But
I do have some actually. On the system, do grab one if you haven't already. But if you do have some, I'll probably have forgotten, so you probably get extras, so don't worry about it. Yeah.
And Taylor Rafa. Taylor leads email at SEMrush. SEMrush, it's a SaaS marketing solution. And my dear friend, we met, I think it's the third time, right? We participate together in this fantastic event. So, round of applause, please. And before we dive into the topic of this panel, I would like that audience will get to know you a little bit better. So I would like to ask each of you how initially you started in B2B marketing or even email. And please don't tell us that you dreamed like from your childhood to be a email marketer, because we all know that email doesn't choose you. No, you don't choose email. Email chooses you. So please go ahead.
I'll start. I'm Keisha, like Anna and Andrew said. I got into email by being scammed. Actually, I was learning to code, and I was doing web development, and someone asked me to develop some email templates and landing page templates, and I did that, and then they ghosted me and they didn't pay me, but. This started a very lovely career that I love now, so can't be mad years later.
I actually dreamed about being an email from 5 years ago. Much like other people, I kind of fell into it. So I was a marketing manager at an online gifts company, personalized gifts, and email was one of the things that I had to do. The dopamine rush of having sales come in every time you send out an email, it's unbeatable. I just got into it, and then I got sucked into the email geeks community, and here I am today, a full-on addict. So there you go.
And for me, I started out as like a digital marketing generalist, basically asked to do everything under the sun, from podcast to video production. And so I sat down and I said, this is not sustainable. I don't feel like I'm able to really do anything really well. I can't specialize. And so I said, okay, what's actually the most effective use of my time and my skill set? And that's sort of how I started within email. I created a role for myself and just went off from there.
Thank you so much for answering. My journey is very similar to your, Taylor. I was like throwing, we have this email. Can you also do this?
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I have no other choice. So just to set the stage, the next question is how email marketing has evolved, and we are talking about the B2B lead nurturing and through the last years, and what are the main factors you see that they change the communication way?
We've had a lot of discussions this morning about the trends within B2B, and I was just talking with Jordi actually about at SEMrush how we've done a lot of personalization testing with our B2B journey, and definitely this notion of employee advocacy, coming up with sort of stars internally and boosting employees in the way that you sort of shape persona and tone and choice of content, I think has been a huge evolution for us. But I think it also can change at different stages of the buyer journey. Yeah.
Oh, okay, sure. So I was at a startup. It was learning technologies, and it involved an AI solution. it was a new product category. So how we had to lean on email was to basically distribute a lot of thought leadership. As a startup, you don't have masses of contacts, and it becomes a much more personal, more like smaller base that you're talking to. And yeah, I think we really leaned on really good, valuable content, just educating people about the problem and how we were solving it. Because before it came around, I think they were leaning on it much more as we just use it for cold email. We just use it to tell people about webinars. But we really shifted towards much more of a this is our newsletter talking about the industry and shining a light on all of the problems and that we happen to solve.
I think the thing that has stood out to me the most as far as B2B evolution with an email is how it interacts with the creator economy. And so, your B2B persona can now look differently depending on who your audience is. If you're, targeting that creator economy or solopreneur, or so your B2B may no longer be, someone in a suit behind a desk. It could now be a person at WeWork, a person at home, a person on the beach. So I think I'm drawn to that portion of the B2B environment or B2B landscape and how that has evolved over time.
Thank you so much. I want to follow on the topic about personalization and automation. And I know that it's sometimes challenging to keep this balance between building the personalized content and automated. So what is your advice on trying to keep this balance?
I've been chosen. I would say like the biggest thing that I sort of see within the industry that kind of bugs me in this area is like, just because you can doesn't mean you should. So just because you can automate something and scale your personalization doesn't mean it's the most effective. Even if you find yourself doing like a lot of things manually and it takes a lot of time and teamwork, because I'm a millennial, to do something. I think really leveraging the data and analytics that you have and spending time in that area to figure out, okay, if we just have one area that we can personalize and put our effort towards to get started, that's probably the more effective way to go than just, first name personalization. Not every business has the resource or the data to be able to, have AI generated images and everything, personalized. Yeah.
I think for me personally, I think the one of the biggest conversations we had internally at my last company was, what does personalization mean? Because to a lot of people in the company, it meant we need to have every single data point about the people we're talking to, and it's just not sustainable. People move around, especially B2B context. People leave the companies, but I think it was more important to me that I educated people that personalization is about what problems are resonating most with people, what use cases are resonating most with people. And so I would encourage people to think about personalization in terms of persona and how you are resonating with your audience, rather than, hey, first name, we notice you work at this company and also you're a Liverpool supporter. It's just not that important.
Actually, I have a follow-up question. Do you have any examples, like any of you, about like over-personalized message, or like on LinkedIn or on email? Please share, how creepy they are.
Oh my god! Yeah. Oh my god! I actually have one example. Some guy, he sent me an in-mail, so obviously it wasn't in my contacts, and it was something, so I can't remember, it was something along the lines of like, hey, I noticed that you're a RuPaul's Drag Race fan. My favorite drag queen is this, and I also noticed you play games. My favorite game is this, and I also noticed you do this other thing, like art, and my favorite artist is this. How about we synergize? Yep. And I was like, ew. So I never contacted him again.
How about we synergize? That's a CTA that I might have to steal at some point. Wow. Yeah, so we have a newsletter at SEMrush that's sent from our CMO, but as email marketers, I think we realize like it's not actually sent from the CMO, right? But we still very closely monitor all replies. And so we get a lot of like B2B, outreach via this newsletter of companies wanting to collaborate with us. And I learned a lot about our CMO actually through the overly creepy personalization, where he went to school and, all of these things. So definitely to see people just, like scraping data I don't think that was an email that I felt like forwarding on to our CMO for a collaboration opportunity for sure. Yeah.
Kisha, any your stories interesting?
You're blessed.
So I sometimes receive messages, either it's like super irrelevant or like it's mentioning, some my previous experience. And yes, some messages on LinkedIn, they sounds a little bit creepy. So as we already started to speak about other channels as LinkedIn, so I would like to ask if you can paint, the perfect customer journey, including several channels, what it would be, and what is the actually email position? Which benefits email has within this whole flow?
It's a heavy one, Anna.
Let's start from touch points. Like we know we love email, we love LinkedIn messages. Yeah. What else would you add?
So for me, I was really hard at work trying to make really irresistible, compelling content. Because that's where it has to start. You have to make the things that are so valuable to people, and my benchmark for that is that they found it so valuable that they shared it with a coworker. That is like the prime thing. They found it really useful. And then after making that sort of content, then you have the intent data, measuring the intent data, and then that's where you can start nurturing people with email, with I know some people are doing work with SMS. I personally haven't had the chance to do that, but I think that's interesting. And also further down the funnel, you have LinkedIn, so you can get your representatives to reach out to people in a very personalized way, not the creepy way that I was talking about, more like we noticed that this is probably a problem that your organization is facing or your team is facing. And then finally, I think it really is I think it's becoming more apparent that face-to-face time within B2B is more important than ever. At events, I think a lot of the action, as we're aware, a lot of the action doesn't happen at the stand and happens at the dinners after, that happens at personal meetings away from all of the noise as well. And so I think I really think it is about getting more. I think it's getting more about human to human, really, in terms of touch points now. So that's what I think. Is it perfect? I don't know. It depends.
I like to think of email as sort of like the connector between various channels, including sales, if that's included in your roundup there, your customer journey. And I think that I look at email as like a relationship builder. So anything that can kind of sort of connect to other channels and connect, whoever your prospect is or your contact through relationship building with an email. That's the way that I like to look at it. So I think a few people were talking about attribution yesterday, and I think that's you can't measure that. You can't measure how strong your relationship is with someone or things like that. But I do think that this is a lot of times a missed opportunity, especially in B2B, where you have to kind of be personal, obviously not to the creepy level that we were just talking about, but to an extent where you start to build a relationship just like you would with someone face to face.
Taylor?
I resonate with what you just said a lot, Keisha. I'm a bass player, and I've actually noticed, like within the email industry, there's a lot of bass players, and weirdly, and I really see that as sort of a personification of the channel. Actually, it's almost like a bridge between social media and web. And in past roles, people have thought about restructuring marketing and like, oh, we don't know where to put email. Should we put you with the web people or should we put you with social media? Is it brand? Is it digital? And one of the things in terms of omnichannel that I've sort of seen changing is taking a different approach to B2B email. I think at least in my experience and the evolution of SEMrush, the emails used to be much more bland and plain text and, just formulaic. And now we're sort of sitting there looking at, okay, what's trending on social? What's our tone on social? What does that look like? How can we adapt it to email? What can we learn about what the audience likes or what the comment section of LinkedIn is saying about these particular topics or features of the tool that we're trying to sell? And then adapt that into the channel. So much more crossover, I would say.
I have a question for you. Which bass? Is it this bass or is it bass guitar?
It's electric.
Okay, cool.
Wow.
Cool. I think I'm like officially inducted now. I just bought a bass like a few months ago. So I didn't even know that that's what we're supposed to do in email. But I wanted to add on to what you were saying as well, as far as like that confusion of where email should be. I actually just had a stint on a marketing team, obviously, a product team. And I thought that was the first time that I encountered that. And then I saw that it's a thing, whether email is on product or whether email is on marketing. But I could definitely see, especially in the B2B space, where email could fit on product when it's heavily involved in your customer journey. So I think that's an interesting take on where email fits as well.
Thank you so much. Actually, one question I didn't plan to ask it, but do you consider like gifting, sending gifts to to prospect potential customer as appropriate channel, and how often it should happen?
I've thought about it because I love to receive a gift or a package in the mail.
Swag.
Yeah, a good pair of socks, t-shirt. I got a mug the other day from Mailmodo, but I can't figure out how to do it myself without being creepy, to be honest with you, because I guess, the way that Mailmodo did it was they, shout out to Mailmodo if anybody's here from there, I attended a webinar and they took our physical addresses, our mailing addresses, and said, hey, we want to send you something. Can we have your address for that? And because I already knew who Mailmodo was, I was comfortable with doing that. So just shout out to them. I think that was a good way to do that. And now I'm not going to forget Mailmodo.
I was going to say on some level it worked because you're talking about Mailmodo in front of an audience. So my team were kind of getting to a point where it felt like everything was falling flat, and so it was sort of a last-ditch solution, like let's try gifting. And it didn't work. I think the key with gifting is that you need to pair it with a human relationship. I don't think it can be done cold. I think actually the way Mailmodo did it was that you're already aware of them on some level. And I think the mistake that we made as a team was that it was totally cold. And so I think you probably want to maybe follow up like previous touch points if you're going to do that. So yeah. SEMrush, no gifts from SEMrush.
I would like to get some swag.
Swag? I would SEMrush swag, yeah.
So the next question is actually, how do you measure success? What are the metrics that you follow like during the B2B nurturing process? Because as we know, for example, for Powtoon, our B2B side, the conversion might take from 3 to 9 months.
Yeah. Sorry.
It's a challenging question.
Yeah.
It's a big question.
How did
Yeah.
you know that the gifting didn't work?
So how did I know the gifting didn't work? Nobody responded back to us. We heard from none of those companies. That's how we knew. It's a pretty good indicator. But I think, so again, as I mentioned, we were a new product category, and one of the things that was important to us was awareness. And success was apparent when people started using our terminology, our thought leadership, quoting our research, and that's how we knew that we were making really compelling content for people. But yeah, you're right. I mean, when your sales cycle is anywhere up to a year long, it's really difficult, and it's difficult to try and sell that to the salespeople who are like, leads now leads. So it's really, I think it's so important to try and map those kind of unmeasurable things to tangible things, like, look, this really high ranking analysts and influencers are using our stuff. That's a good indicator that what we're doing is landing.
I would say similarly to what Naja said, when you hear about it, I feel like, and it depends on when the stage that you're at, of course, because obviously the ultimate metric is revenue and new customers and all that. But if you're at a stage of awareness or relationship building, if someone reaches out to you and says, hey, I loved your newsletter, or hey, I'm featuring what you did in our newsletter, or things like that, those are the things that I think our relationship building. Obviously, I love relationship building, but those are the things that I look for. How are people responding to it? Have I seen it somewhere else where someone just took it and used it and tagged you here or tagged you there or gave you credit on this place? You find a new backlink that you didn't even ask for. Things like that as well, depending on obviously the stage where you're at with the customer journey and that particular piece of content or email that you're sending.
Thank you. Taylor, anything to add?
Yeah, I had to think about it for a minute because we have a very healthy email team. There's like 14 email marketers spread out across like sales, automated, mass, and product as well. So I would say within the team that I lead with mass, of course, there's revenue as bottom line, but we also have a really strong directive to raise awareness and sort of build the brand. And so definitely engagement with the channel itself is also a really important factor for us.
Thank you. Now I would like to use the buzzword artificial intelligence. We all know what is that. So we know that it's affecting the marketing area. So how do you think we can use it within the B2B? Either it's predictive analysis, content management, and do you actually actively use? Maybe you have cases of success or failure.
Yeah, so at SEMrush, we used AI to write an email about AI and then poked fun of it, like within the email itself, as sort of like, hey, if you read this to the end, it was actually written by AI and used our tool in the process, that sort of thing. And I would say in terms of larger scale applications, what I would really love to use more of it for is customizing the tone to different, personas. So we have a feature that could be used by, a small business, a huge enterprise, or an entrepreneur. And so to be able to, write a different email copy according to those tones and then do that at scale, I think would be a really great value add.
I was lucky enough, not to sound like a hipster, I was using AI before it was cool. No. So I was lucky enough because of the company I was at, they were playing around with OpenAI before ChatGPT landed on the market. And so a lot of us were in the OpenAI playground, writing each other stupid poems and things like that. So I set up a weekly session with the team to learn how we could incorporate generative AI, assistive AI into our workflow. And I think the one of the successes we saw was actually in process, so back-end stuff, nothing really facing the audience. So, cleaning up meeting notes, a lot of creative jumping points, just I think writing microcopy is the worst because the economy of words makes you think so much. Like you can faff about for a paragraph or two, and so generative AI is very good for that as well. So one use case I'd love to share with you guys is that you can take a look at your, for example, your subject lines, top performing subject lines, stick that into ChatGPT, and then ask it to generate really good performing subject lines based off the data you've put into it. So things like that. But yeah, I think it's at the moment, I love it much more as a jumping off point and a process assistant.
I will say that my ADHD brain loves AI because it's never that I don't have ideas. It's always that I have too many ideas. So it helps me to kind of brain dump and kind of organize those ideas and figure out which direction to take and where I want to go, or so for me, it helps with content generation just because it helps me to organize what's up here better than I can do myself. So it cuts down a lot of time on processes for me. So whereas before I would have had to sit there and figure out, like, unravel this big ball of thoughts and see where I wanted to start, now it's more so like I don't need to unravel it, AI helps me unravel it, and then I go from there and kind of sprinkle in my stuff and all of that. So that's the way that I use it so far. I do plan to get into some other ways of using it as well. I have a couple of ideas, but I'll share them with you when it's time.
I think you touched very an important topic about adopting actually AI technologies, and Nat, you mentioned that you had a weekly meetings with your team. At Powtoon, we had AI demo day, and each team prepared a case how they actually use. So we as a mail team, we mentioned of course subject line, copy, send time optimization, comparing it, and design team also they used their tools. Dev team. We use few solutions to work with webinars replay, with the videos. So yeah, I think the adoption and being in consistency, this is super important. So now when we talked about the future, let's go a little bit backwards. So imagine you have an email time machine. So it means you can choose any historical person, any actor, whoever you want as a lead, potential lead. So in this case, what you would like to send them, how you will address them, and what's going to be the service or product. Anyone from the movie to cartoons, whatever you think.
I don't know if I have a person in mind, but I would love to just go back to the beginning of email when it's you could send anything, and it was it's new, so let's buy from this person because they know something we don't know. So I mean, anyone really, I don't know, Whitney Houston in the beginning of her career or something. Yeah. Someone.
Stunning. That's such a great one. I actually so professionally, I actually kind of already did it. This wasn't a person, but it was an account. So you mentioned video games, and I actually reached out to Ubisoft and Electronic Arts, and I actually got them. I actually collaborated on a blog with them. Okay, so this is a hot tip. I collaborated on a blog with them. They loved it, and obviously they shared it with their network and made them look like rock stars. Step one. And then step two, we had great conversations because they love working with me because I'm delightful. No. People are like, ugh. But we developed a really good relationship off of that because we had good interviews. And then after that, that's where we developed a really good working relationship. And we, there was a lot of emails exchanged because, the red tape is out of this world. And so, yeah, I would say that I kind of already did that with dream accounts, and I have really good relationships with people even after I left the business. But in terms of the ideal lead, probably David Bowie when he was alive. I'd love to just embarrass myself and just fangirl all over email and probably really embarrass myself. So yeah.
On our team, we do something called Feedback Fridays, which is completely ripped off from really good emails. But it's like an internal meeting where we try and take a topic like Black Friday or get prepared for the year ahead, and we look at other brands and then try and analyze their emails so that we can sort of think about and reflect internally about how we can improve ours. And one that I really, really liked was Spotify's creator newsletter for podcasts. So I would say I would probably choose somebody like Audre Lorde or Eleanor Roosevelt. And I think, yeah, looking back at historical figures that made great contributions to society, that would make really great podcast hosts, I think. So that's who I would choose. Yeah.
Great, thank you. We have 10 more minutes, and before we are moving to questions from the audience, I would like to ask you for three the most important takeaways. Again, it could be only email focused or in general B2B lead nurturing process.
Can anyone guess what I'm going to say?
Relationship.
Relationship building. It's my favorite. And I feel like that's with your customers, your audience, as well as internally. I think we need to squash the sales marketing beef and build relationships and work together with that. So I don't know. I feel like relationship building would be 1 and 2. 3 would be, I guess, slow down on the personalization. No, like let's not, the same way that you would, this probably is still relationship building, but the same way that you would not like creepily spy on a new friend that you wanted or someone that you wanted to date, why are we creepily spying on prospects? So
I think 3 takeaways. So one is I think so much is moving so fast, and I think it really is about reading the room, being a really good active listener to what's happening around us, and really trusting your gut feeling. Because I feel like data can only tell you so much, but sometimes a hunch, it might be a good thing to follow through on, because ultimately we're dealing with people in B2B. Secondly, I think, AI is just the latest in the series of changes in the landscape. Like for example, when I was a little baby marketer, I didn't, iPhones weren't even a thing. So that, imagine that. So I think it's just really about being nimble and being as flexible as possible. And then I think, thirdly, one of the biggest takeaways for B2B is, I think so much is about, I'm going to say this a lot, but I think so much of it is about being human, because ultimately people have a suspicion of companies and organizations now, and I think we need to recognize that. And I think ultimately people want to hear from other people, and I think that's a really important change I've seen most recently.
Yeah, definitely empathy and connection. I would also add to that education, the importance of being able to share insights with your audience and not really trying to fast track that process, not skipping ahead. That's a really important step that can sometimes take a really long time, but definitely overall beneficial to your brand. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So take this one, please, and I will ask the audience about the questions. Please raise your hand, Kevin. Da-da-da-da. We are in trouble, I guess. Please.
Hello, thank you so much. Since we are friends, you are invited to my birthday, the upcoming birthday.
thank you.
But I have 2 children, and sometimes they ask me like, what do you do for your work, and why is it important for you? So when you're on my birthday, my 2 children will come to you and they will ask you, what do you do for your work, and why is it important for you? What will be your answer?
I make friends. And I help them make friends. And then we all make money together.
That's so much better than what I had, which is I'm a marketer. It's not that important. But yeah, that's such a great one. I might have to steal that. I'm gonna make friends and I help people make friends. I think is I make messages and I send messages out a lot.
I'm a bass player. No. Yeah, I would say I help small businesses succeed, help marketers do a better job. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Just raise your hand and I will note down things. Okay, if think few more minutes because I have something. So we talked about the whole customer funnel, but now I would like to ask you about the different stages in the customer journey. So first of all, like how many stages, you would say they are? We all know BOF, middle of funnel, and so on. And what content you would like to dedicate to each of these stages? You can just mention one of them. We talked previously a lot about webinars. So is it a thing and to what stage you would address that?
I mean, we have like just attract, engage, convert, upsell. We don't really have a typical like ABM, MQL, SQL sort of model. So I would say this is kind of difficult to answer, coming from my vantage point. Yeah.
So the position I was in was that our ICP were enterprise organizations, chief learning officers, and in reality, there's probably only like 2,000 people in the world who hold that position. So as for the customer journey, excuse my French, but like who the fuck knows? It was really like all of these people are individuals. They all had their individual worries. They are bombarded with messages, emails, all sorts of things every day, budget constraints, blah blah blah. So I think for us it was like, okay, we need to. So for this, in terms of the stages, I think it was very important for us in the awareness stage that we were talking to these people person to person. I've been saying that a lot, but it made sense because again, there were maybe only like 2,000 people in the world who were like interested or could have our solution, and so it was really important for us to have a good. I've lost the word now, but it was good for us to appear well, so that they could talk about us in very positive terms to other chief learning officers they knew. So yeah, I think we were very concerned about bringing as much value to them. So webinars, thought leadership, research, so that they could bring stuff back to their leadership and be like, look, it's not just us. This is a real thing.
As a true marketer, I'm going to say it depends. I think that depending on your product and your audience, that's obviously going to determine your customer journey. I think the most important part of it for me, especially in B2B, is that sort of educational building trust phase, because that's when your prospect and your audience gets to know who you are, what you're doing, what you can do for them. And I think the webinar fits nicely in that space.
All right, thank you very much. I have a question as well. What is the biggest mistake you see that others are making in this field?
Say that again. The biggest mistake.
Yeah, what is the biggest mistake that you see getting made over and over again?
Sushi. We send sushi.
Yeah. I would say burning through your database, ruining relationships for short-term revenue gains. Yeah.
That's a great one. I think making use of junior SDRs to essentially pretend to be experts, when I think really their role is to almost be like, hey, we think you have a problem, we'd love to connect you with one of our internal experts who can help you with this particular problem, because it's really unfair on juniors to do this work that is so key, which is essentially your first impression to the people you're talking to, and you cannot have a second chance at a first impression. I think that's so many businesses have kind of blacklisted because their SDRs have just done such a shoddy job of reaching out to me. And I just think, really, if this is how you think a good first impression looks like, I don't really want to work with you.
So this might be a personal pet peeve, but I'm trying to think of the best way to say this. When brands like sort of co-opting vernacular, I'll say. So like when you'll see in the subject line, it's giving something, it's giving fake, you know, like, to be honest. So and I think that might be a personal pet peeve, but I'm sure I'm not the only one, and it puts me off. Like, now I don't care what you're giving, what you're trying to give me, what you have in your email. I'm unsubscribing.
It's like you're a Fortune 500 company. Why are you using Gen Z slang? You know, like everyone knows. Yeah, I mean, totally.
And to be fair, some companies do it well. I think Slack, it does social media really well. There are others who do, like, I love all Litmus content, but you can just see when someone is trying too hard and they just saw someone else say something and they were like, oh, well, how can we use it? And yeah, that's exactly the face. Very cringe.
Yeah, my question is just on the B2B topic. How much of the communication with B2B feels like applying for a job? Or how does it, like, in what ways is it like applying for a job?
I'd like it to not feel like that. So I'm going to say let's not, unless that's what we're actually doing. But I particularly hate applying for jobs, so maybe I'm not the right one.
I know, Pavel, you also wanted to ask something, but maybe a little bit later.
Thank you. Can I go?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. That was great, guys. Thank you. I've got a bit of a B2C head here, so it's just something we're struggling with, so I just wanted to pose it to you. So you guys mentioned a lot about bloat when it came to new toys, like oversaturating emails with AI, different data points, etc. I kind of want to ask about KPIs, because one thing that I still wouldn't say struggle with, but a point of contention is a lot of vanity KPIs at different stages of a funnel. So I guess it would be interesting for me to know what you guys would deem as more vanity KPIs at key points in an omnichannel funnel. What matters and what's fluff, basically.
I think SEMrush is in a good place.
Yeah, we have a lot of data, a lot of dashboards. So, yeah, definitely in terms of being able to track, conversions to demos or to trials or to paid plans or even upsells, adding multiple people onto one account. Definitely those are not what I would consider vanity metrics. It's face-to-face time with sales. It's someone who is expressing that they need to be able to get more out of the tool. And so we take a look at that for sure. But I think the reality is, you deal with a lot of different teams that have different objectives within a business, right? And we've almost gone as far as like creating a separate dashboard for our team versus for internal stakeholders, right? Because people still want to see open rates. They still want to be able to know exactly how many people the email was delivered to. And for us, that's maybe not always the most relevant metric to track. But yeah, still important to be able to engage in those internal discussions about it and not just hide it from people or that sort of thing. Yeah.
Some of the most interesting metrics that I've been asked to report on are how many people are in our database, how many likes have we gotten on social media, on LinkedIn, how many people do we talk to at the booth, at the at the conference at Excel. Those things are not that important. They're observable, but yeah, it's really interesting when you have people in your team that aren't super aware of what the impact of these metrics are.
I really like what you said, Taylor, about internal versus external stakeholders. I like to think of it that way as well. Also, for me, although there are lots of metrics that we can refer to as vanity metrics, I think those are even important when we're looking at how they're interconnected and how they relate to other metrics. So even though open rates are, you don't want that to be your main KPI for any campaign, but it can tell you a story based on what it was in the last campaign versus this campaign, or last year this time versus this year this time. So really looking at the patterns and the trends within those metrics versus the metrics themselves at any one place in time.
Thank you so much. I apologize for everyone who didn't ask their questions. Pavel, Richard, sorry for that. But we have an amazing chat, and you had an opportunity to ask our amazing panelists later. So let's give a round of applause.